All right, sounds good.
like old times. All right, and in three, two. Hey, welcome to 956 Preps. I'm Jake Berry, and alongside me tonight is my good friend Clay Williams. Clay Williams, a former sports director of Channel 4. Clay, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be back with you, man. We haven't done this in a while. It's been
Yeah,
it's been a stretch.
yeah. So, the last time we talked was right before you left, but how is Virginia?
Virginia is fantastic. It's definitely a little colder than South Texas, that's for sure. We actually had a little bit of snow the other day. I mean, not much, didn't stick, but just to see snow in April is pretty crazy. But no, Virginia's fun. Family's loving it, loving the new place, loving the new job. It's definitely different, but it's a good different.
Well, people are probably wondering if it's just a man crush or why did I have you on today? And I want to do more with you, but what I wanted to talk about was because you're in Virginia, right there
Mm-hmm.
next to near North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
What's the situation there for athletics and the future of for next season?
Well, I mean, if you're talking college football, I mean, I can't see any way it happens anytime before October, maybe November. No matter what my my coach Mike Gundy up at Oklahoma State. I'm a fan, but I'm not a fan of what he was saying the other day. I mean, there's no way that you can get everybody together and keep everybody together and start to try and plan a season yet until you know more about what's going to happen. And right now, we don't know enough about what's going to happen with the coronavirus and how it's going to spread. I mean, it looks like New York might be hitting its peak, but I mean, it's going to spread inward from there. It's not even going to hit its peak in places like Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. Well, Louisiana may be a little higher because of New Orleans, but it's not going to hit its peak in the Midwest and maybe in the mountain states for another 2 3 months maybe. So there's no way that we can, until there's a vaccine or until there's enough tests where you can track everybody and keep tabs on everybody who's got it and keep testing those who don't have it to make sure they still don't have it. When we've got enough tests and we can track people, maybe that's when we can start to move back into it. But that's still a long ways away, in my opinion.
Yeah, I keep looking at Kirk Herbstreit thought that the NCAA and the NFL weren't going to kick up this next coming year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. On the high school front, what are you guys looking at?
Well, the first thing Virginia was one of the first states to cancel school for the rest of the school year. So our governor did that, several weeks ago. By I think, middle March or maybe third week in March, he came out and said, "That's it. We're done for the year. We're not going to go back to school at least until the fall." So everybody, it all stopped down. And once again, I mean, Virginia is a little luckier than most in the fact that we're the only state who's got a doctor as governor. So this guy knows, he kind of, knows who to talk to, knows what he's doing, and he's saying we can't even think about opening back up until everything's set, until we've got the tracking mechanisms, until we've got better treatments that we can give to people, until we've hit peak. And the thing is they might hit peak. DC is a hot spot right now, and then there's another hot spot in Richmond right now where over 36 people are dead. I think they might be over 40 now in just this one healthcare facility just outside of Richmond. So I mean, Virginia's getting it, and we're getting it more than a lot of other states. Nowhere near as much as as New York, of course, but the fact that we're seeing it means that we might hit peak before other places like Texas, for instance, or Oklahoma, or New Mexico, places like that. So if we hit peak and we're able to get enough tests, and they're able to test what antibodies do, and and find out what how doctors can use, maybe people who have recovered use their plasma to treat other people who have the virus. Once we get all that going, maybe we can go back to having sports. But it's still far away. We're over a week and a half into April, but I still think we're at least 2 months away from even setting a date for when we can return. on any of this. I don't see any decisions being made one way or another probably until at least the 1st of June.
Now, what's your opinion? I was going to say how stupid, but how do you think that how do you like the NCAA thing where they think that they're going to play games in a stadium with no fans?
That's not going to work. If you're talking about football, you still have to have everybody quarantined and tested 2 weeks before you can even play a game. You have to make sure the other team has been quarantined and tested before they can play a game for 2 weeks. You're talking about an incredible amount of medical professionals and tests and lab work and everything that has to be done before these guys can even practice together. Of course we're not going to get, 90,000 in Austin to go see a football game for a while. That's not going to happen. But even just to make it into a television event where there's no fans in there, football's a contact sport. It's easy to pass the virus that way. There's so much that has to be done with, how many, we're talking over 150 Division I teams, just Division I teams, 1A as we used to call it, and every single one of the 100 people on their team, plus the 50 so or other coaches, all have to be tested and retested to make sure, and then quarantined. Coaches can't go home, not if they've got, what if you've got a coach whose wife is a nurse? He's not going to be able to come and be anywhere close to the team. What if you've got, all your players who are around, you've got to get them and just get them away from everybody else and quarantine them so they don't get the coronavirus. And then maybe even, maybe then you can do it. But it's just such a mammoth undertaking. And, there's bigger priorities than sports right now. There just are. So I just can't see it. It's not priority one. It might be priority one for the NCAA, but it can't be priority one for the country. Not right now.
I think I know what you're talking about when you say the priorities and bigger things. I think you're talking about the Dallas free agency, the Dallas Cowboys free agency. I just want to let's talk about that one right now because you're a big Dallas Cowboy fan and I am not.
I am.
What did you think about their off season?
Well, it's one of those things where if Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones would have made some moves earlier, if they would have locked up Dak a year earlier, they would have got him for a lot less money and they would have had a lot more under the cap where they would have been able to keep some other people. They lost a lot of guys. Lost a lot of guys to free agency, and they were able to get a couple, and they're taking a flyer on some other ones. I'm glad they were able to keep Amari Cooper. They're still working on a long-term deal for Dak to get him off of the franchise tag. But when you're talking about that much money to Dak and Zeke, and then all the money that you're giving to Amari Cooper, and then you have Travis Frederick who is retiring, and you're taking flyers on guys with some serious problems in their past, like Aldon Smith. It could have been better if it had been planned better. It didn't seem to me like the Cowboys wanted to make a commitment to Dak last year when they should have. Because your quarterback is it's the most important part of your team, and you've got to shell out the money for it. And they didn't shell out the money last year, so they have to shell out a lot more money now, and that's going to mean that they're going to lose guys. And all of this depth that they had for the last 2 years, is basically gone. Their offensive line is nowhere near as good as it was 2 years ago. Their defense isn't as good as it was last year. What happens? You've lost Byron Jones. What happens if Leighton Vander Esch doesn't come back? And what if he plays more like last year than he did 2 years ago? Aldon Smith. Like I said, taking a flyer, seeing if he can, come through like he did before he had the giant suspension. There's just a lot of questions on this team, and there are a lot of questions that got to be laid at the foot of Jerry and Stephen Jones and their failure to, lock guys up when they had to get locked up.
Now, do you think that taking Jason Witten last year for a rental on an old man, do you think that was not probably the smartest thing? That they could have went and got somebody in for agency, or maybe established Jarwin or somebody else.
I don't think one extra year with Jason Witten was going to hurt. It's not like it was. It's not like it was a killer when it came to to the cap and it's not like he took that much time away from Blake Jarwin, because Jarwin outplayed Witten last year and he got more snaps than Jason Witten did last year. And now Jason Witten is a Las Vegas Raider. That's the weirdest sentence I've said today, and he's gone. But I don't think having him last year really hurt anything that badly. I think he wanted to come back. Jerry wanted him back. Now the interesting guy, if he comes back, is Dez Bryant, because Jerry's got a soft spot in his heart for Dez. God love him. And Dez wants to be back so bad. And, it's been years and injuries, and I heard one guy in Dallas predict this, and I agree with it. Dez Bryant will probably be in Dallas Cowboys training camp, if there is a training camp, whether it's in August or whether it's in October or whether it's in November. I think Dez Bryant will be in Dallas Cowboys training camp, but just as a guy trying to prove that he can still do it. But, you've got guys like Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, who've been proving it for the past couple of years that they can do it. I don't see Dez staying with the team. I don't know if he's got it left in him to join any NFL squad, to tell you the truth. Would have liked to have seen him on an XFL squad, but he didn't want to do that. He could have shown something there. He could have shown something to some scouts, for the few games that they were out there, but he didn't. And so he's an unknown quantity. Jason Witten's gone. Dez Bryant wants to come back. Like I said, lots of questions on this team.
So do you think it's better off if they don't play the season? Because at least Cowboy fans can say this was our year again.
That's funny. Yeah, well, undefeated in 2020 if there is no season. So, Cowboys fans can go with that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm a Vikings fan, and we gave Kirk Cousins another extension. So
you like that?
I don't like it at all. I think it's the worst thing ever. But let me ask you this. Do you think it's smart that Dak Prescott has not signed a contract yet? Because think about this. If there's no signing bonus, that means that you're not going to have any money come, the fall if there's no football. At least with a signing bonus, he can pick up that money ahead of time.
Yeah, he definitely can. But Dak's going to get paid. And I don't think Dak's worried about getting paid. I mean, he wants to get – don't get me wrong. He wants the years on the contract. That seems to be the sticking point right now with the Cowboys, is making sure it's 5 years instead of 4. And that's what's keeping a long-term contract from being signed. But no, I'm not worried about it. If there's no football, it's not like Jerry Jones won't take care of Dak Prescott. It's not like Dak Prescott is going to cry poor and go up to Jerry Jones' house and say, "Hey, can I have some money?" That's not going to happen. So I'm not too worried about that.
Was there somebody else that you probably would have wanted instead of Dak Prescott, besides Tom Brady and Drew Brees, maybe?
Tom Brady and Drew Brees are old, 40 and 42. No, you need to get your young quarterback who's proven that he can win in the league and get him locked up. Now, are there, other guys, are there young guys who have shown something? Yes, but there's nobody out there who's free, who's available, who's shown that they can do what Dak does. I've heard people talk about Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis Winston, but, what have they done that Dak hasn't? Dak's outperformed both of those guys, in the last several years. Dak has proven that he can take the Cowboys to the playoffs and he can win playoff games. And that's what you need to do. People say, oh, but his team carried him. He was carried by the defense. He was carried by his offensive personnel, blah, blah, blah. No, he got there. You have to have a quarterback who gets you there. There's too many quarterbacks in this league who actually keep you from getting to the playoffs. Dak Prescott is not one of those guys. Jameis Winston might be one of those guys. And so, you've got him. He's homegrown. He turned out great. It's another miracle. Cowboys come into these quarterbacks like, the Cleveland Browns have gone through 30 quarterbacks in 20 years. The Cowboys keep getting these these good quarterbacks thrown in their lap, guys like Tony Romo, and Dak Prescott. Neither one of those guys were supposed to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and yet look at them now.
Do you think Cowboys go with CJ Henderson with their first pick? I see that everybody's saying that right now, and here's the thing: is this year's draft probably the most scariest one because there's no real, you can't really view these guys ahead of time.
Right, you can't look at them ahead of time. You can't give them Wonderlic tests. We got the combine done though. I'm not. If there's one thing that the Cowboys have had that's good, it's a scouting department. And I can't remember, Will McClay, that's his name. Will McClay is the guy who is great with the personnel. They have kept him on this team. They are paying him a lot of money to make sure that the Cowboys draft the right guys. The Cowboys have been drafting the right guys. They've had better drafts in the past, 5 years than they had in the 10 years previous. I trust Will McClay. I trust the picks they'll make. It's obvious that you need picks on defense. You need a cornerback, need a safety. Maybe you need a defensive lineman. Those, you've got to concentrate on the defense right now. Even though you've lost some depth on your offense, you still need to get the defense because that is where you are hurting the most with guys leaving the team. And so I think they'll go defense in the first round. And it's interesting that the NFL has decided to go through with the draft. I think, it's a fine idea. NFL draft used to be done by telephone. It was never televised. We're going back to old school. It's fine. Somebody calls in and says, yeah, I want this guy. And the guy at the NFL says, okay. And they put it out on Twitter and send it out there, and it'll be fine. I don't see a problem with having the NFL draft.
All right, last question. And this is a tough one.
Uh-oh.
Do the Bengals become the Bengals again? And what I mean by that is, do they take Joe Burrow or do they take Tua?
Listen,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter either way.
Well, the Bengals are going to be the Bengals. The Bengals going to bingle, as they say. The Bengals are facing a tough choice. Do they believe that Joe Burrow is the future? Do they believe that he is that much better than Tua Tagovailoa? Do they believe that Tua is all the way back from his injuries? Are they talking to his doctors? How much better do they think Joe Burrow is than Tua? Do they think Burrow is a franchise quarterback? Do they think Tua is a franchise quarterback? If they have any doubts about either one of these guys, then they need to make the trade with the Dolphins. They need to make that trade with the Dolphins, get 2 number ones and a 2. Dolphins trade up. They get Burrow. Bengals fill some holes because they've got more holes than just at quarterback. What good is having Joe Burrow or at your quarterback position if you don't have anybody to protect him, or if your defense is letting up 30 points a game? You need to fill a lot of holes. If they believe Joe Burrow is a franchise quarterback, it is too tough to find franchise quarterbacks in this league. You've got to take him. And but if they think that Tua is just as good, then yeah, maybe they make the trade with Miami and they go ahead and pick Tua, because that they can do. But then Tua's, how is he getting back from his hip and his other injuries? It's a tough situation. We'll see how good the Bengals scouting department is. That's for sure.
So, but if you had to make a pick, who are you taking?
If I had to choose between Joe Burrow, Tua, or if I had to choose between either taking Joe Burrow or trading with Miami and picking Tua Tagovailoa, I would trade with Miami and I would pick Tua Tagovailoa. That's what I would do. Because Joe Burrow's great, don't get me wrong, but he's also one year. I mean, he's shown a lot. He could be great. He could be the next Tom Brady. But I mean, and maybe they believe that. If they do, they've looked at more film than I have. Right now, I'm just going by numbers, and my numbers say they need more help at other spots. They need the draft picks. If you need a quarterback that bad, pick Tua, see how he does. If your doctors clear him, pick Tua, get the extra picks for Miami, and fill all the rest of the holes on your team. There
you have it. Clay Wiliams back throwing sports knowledge here in the RGV. Thank you, Clay, for taking the time. I know I know you'd rather be out, eating at a restaurant, going to a movie, but thanks for coming here.
What's that? Hold on. Eating in a restaurant? What is that? I'm sorry. I don't understand what that is. Movies. I know we have those on the TV here. So, yeah, that's where we go to see them. That's I'm the guy who goes out and gets the groceries. That's me. I go out once a week and get the groceries, and that's all I do. I go to work. I get the groceries. We do nothing else. We're in shutdown.
Well, thank you for joining me on my new show, Cabin Fever. It feels like old times.
It does. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.